Hello! It's Raimi, and today I'm going to be recommending you some books. And I originally got this idea from a recent Sarah Caroli video. She posted her recommendations for new readers, and I thought that was a great idea. So I wanted to kind of do my own spin on it and recommend some of my favorite books and books that I think would be great for if you're just beginning to read or if you just want some recommendations or whatever have you. I thought this would be a fun thing to do, and I kind of wanted to put in my 2 cents for it as well. So without further ado, let's get into the recommendations. The first genre I think I'm going to, I have some wrappers here from when I had a snack earlier. Whoops. The first genre that I'm gonna do is probably a romance. That is like probably one of the more popular genres that people tend to go for and kind of is easier to get into when you're first reading. So I have a couple recommendations here with me, and I also have a couple that I'll pop up on the screen because I don't actually have the physical copy of the book. The first one that I think would be a really good one is actually a book I recently finished, and it is called The Cheat Sheet. And it is a kind of a sports romance, which I'm not like usually super into, but it wasn't so sports heavy that you felt like you were like watching a football game. And also that one is a friends to lovers book, and so it's kind of like a really like easygoing trope. It's not like, I don't know, it's not like an anxiety invoking trope, I guess. So I really enjoyed that book. Yeah, I think I just really loved the main characters. The story was really heartwarming, and I just had a smile on my face pretty much the whole time reading it. And I don't think it was very long in the sense of that it's gonna like drag on if you're just getting into reading. I don't think it's going to be a book that's going to feel hard to get through, if that makes sense. So that would be my first romance recommendation. A recommendation that's more in the young adult side of romance would be the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. So this has 3 books in it, and each book is about 275 pages, so they're not super long, but the story of Belly and the 2 boys that she spends her summers with is really sweet. And I absolutely loved this trilogy. I finished it so quick. And so I feel like if you're just getting into like romance and reading, I don't know, I just felt like it was a really fun book series to get into. One that's not like, 600, 700 page books in the series, if that makes sense. I liked that in The Summer I Turned Pretty, it is like very like lighthearted, very sweet, while also having points where there's more depth and it deals with more real life issues. I thought that the author Jenny Han did a great job with the Summer I Turned Pretty series, and that one is also being turned into a TV series, so if you wanted to read the books and then go watch the series, you kind of can have that experience, which is really fun. The next book I want to recommend is actually one by Colleen Hoover. I think that if you've never read a Colleen Hoover book, which I haven't read a lot of her books, I think I've only read 2 of her books, this being one of them. If you're curious about Colleen Hoover and you're wanting to kind of dive into one of her books, but not sure which one to start with, I think that Confess is actually a pretty good one to start with. In my personal opinion, from things that I've heard from her other books, they can be quite heavy. And this was like, obviously this is an emotional book, it's a really good book, but I didn't feel like I was burdened by this book, I guess, if that makes sense. I will say I would look up trigger warnings for this book. There is one part that I could say someone could have a hard time reading through. So before you read any of these recommendations, I would highly recommend looking up trigger warnings just for your personal safety and your sake and everything. I really enjoyed this book. I really liked the characters. I thought that there were so many parts where I laughed out loud. There were parts where I was, sad for the characters. There were parts where I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And yeah, so I think if you're looking for like a Colleen Hoover book and you're not exactly sure where to start and you're a little bit nervous about diving into her like more intense books, I think Confess is a really good place to start if you're wanting to get into Colleen Hoover, in my personal opinion. Next, we have In 5 Years by Rebecca Surley. I think that's how you say her name. And I freaking fell in love with this book. I love this book so much. My best friend recommended it to me, and it is a romance, but it is so much more than that, and I was blown away. I didn't really know what to expect going into this. I thought it was going to be like just kind of like a frou-frou romance, like cutesy, like some funny things happen and like boom, they're in love and whatnot. That is not this book. It is way more deep and more heartfelt and more, it gets you self-reflecting, and it gets you thinking about life, and it gets you thinking about what is most important in life. And I highly recommend this book. It is 250 pages or 251 pages, so relatively short. It did not take me very long to get through this book, and I absolutely loved it. And my best friend, actually, I borrowed her copy, and then she went and found me a copy at the thrift store because she knew that I loved it so much and wanted to own it for myself. If you're looking for a romance that has more depth to it and the ability to kind of be self-reflective while reading, thoroughly enjoyed this. I have one more romance recommendation, and that is The Switch by Beth O'Leary. Oh my gosh, I loved this book. I went into it not really knowing exactly what to expect. I had never read a Beth O'Leary book before, but I had heard like her writing is iconic and everybody is just blown away by her writing, and so I kind of had this expectation of like, oh, this must be really good, and it did not disappoint. The book was so sweet. It deals with real life things while also adding that like laughter and that fun lightheartedness and that flair, and it kind of gives you two perspectives of a grandma who's going through certain things later in life and just kind of reconcile that she's not her younger self anymore and just kind of trying to deal with everything that she's going through. And then her granddaughter, who is also going through some serious life things, and they kind of swap lives, hence the name The Switch. But I would highly recommend Beth O'Leary's The Switch if you are looking for a little deeper, but not quite as deep as in 5 years, funny, laugh out loud, heartfelt romance book. Those are my romance recommendations for you guys, whether you're a beginning reader or you just want some fun recommendations. So yeah, moving on to the next genre. I am starting to get into this genre, so I personally haven't even like dove that deep into it. I've probably read 3 or 4 mystery thrillers in the last year, but the recommendations I do have, in my personal opinion, I think are very good. So first, I am going to recommend The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I finished this book in my video reading Haley Pham's 5-star books. I also realized I just put the dust jacket on upside down. My bad. So this book is a whirlwind. Oh my freaking goodness. And it had me guessing and I did not guess correctly. All of my predictions were not correct with this book, so I absolutely loved that. It was not predictable. It was, in my personal opinion, it was not predictable. It also added some very interesting elements to the book that I did not expect, which was really fun. It also gives you these like kind of different perspectives. So it has these chunks that say before, and then it will go to another chunk that says now. So you're kind of getting background and like you're getting all this build up, and then you're getting like a glimpse into like the action and what's happening now, and you're like, wait, that was only 1 page worth of now, and like I need to know what's happening. I thought Riley Sager's writing was incredible. I thought the writing was very straightforward, but not in a clinical way, just in a very easy to understand way. And then the last one I have for this category, I'm actually not 100% of the way through. I have a little less than 100 pages left of Alice Feeney's Rock, Paper, Scissors, but I'm going to recommend it because this book, I don't know how it ends yet, but Alice Feeney's writing is really good. It's a really interesting style, but I really enjoy it. And so far, there has been so much buildup and so much suspense, and I cannot wait to see what the last part of this book holds. I bet it's gonna be amazing. This book is less than 300 pages, and so it's been a very quick read, and I think that's why I'm putting this in this video, because it has been very quick, very snappy, very to the point. There's not a ton of fluff in here, and it's cool because you get the husband's perspective, the wife's perspective, and then she has been writing letters to her husband every year on their anniversary, so you're also getting to read those letters. So the next stack that I have is my one true love. It is fantasy books. If you know me, or if you've watched any of the videos on the channel, you know that I am a fantasy lover. My primary genre is fantasy. I absolutely love fantasy. I could read fantasy pretty much all day, every day. The first recommendation is going to be one of my favorite books of all time, okay? Of all freaking time. And I will never, ever, ever, never, ever, never stop talking about this book. It is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. Please go read this book. Please, like, I beg of you, I need more people to talk about this book with, okay? It is about a girl named Mina, and she essentially gets thrown into this new underworld. And it's about her experience, it's about spiritual growth, and it's all fantastical, and the writing is incredible, and it's lyrical without being overwhelming, and there's world building without it being too much. I just am genuinely so absolutely connected and in love with this book. It's incredible. It's a relatively short fantasy book. It's 321 pages, which is actually quite short for a fantasy novel. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about this book. It was heartfelt, it was heartbreaking at the same time. The characters, you absolutely connect and fall in love with them. There's morally gray characters, there's romance, there's family, there's, I don't know, it's just like passion and like love and danger and like all the things that you want, set in the most incredible and beautiful world that I've probably ever read about. If you're wanting to get into fantasy, please read The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. Just please go read it, okay? Thank you very much. This one's a little bit more beefy, so you'll just have to deal with it. It is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, and it is a duology, and the kind of cool part about these books is you can read the duology, but they also tie into all of her other books that she has written, which is very cool. You can choose to just read Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves, or you can read the entire Remnant Chronicles and then Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves, or you can just read the Remnant Chronicles. It's up to you. So that's what I kind of like about this. Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves technically does happen after the Remnant Chronicles. Some readers have said, so I'll just be straight up, that Dance of Thieves took them a little bit to get into and understand because it kind of happens in the middle of a bigger story. I personally did not have that problem. I personally did not feel that way at all. I immediately connected with the main character, Kazi, and I just absolutely fell in love with her. This is also a dual POV, which is, this book is the first dual POV I ever read, and it absolutely made me fall in love with that style. I love getting to hear from both perspectives of the main characters. This book is 505 pages, so it is just over 500 pages, but 1000% worth it. I would highly recommend it. Kazi, the main character, is incredible. She is such a spitfire. She is so like everything you want to be, and she's passionate, and she has a heart of gold, and she really loves the people in her life. And then the other main character, Jace, is very similar in the sense, but he's maybe a little bit softer, sweeter, more gentle, I don't know. This was kind of one of the first books that I read getting back into reading, and truly made me fall back in love with reading. So I will forever be grateful for these books, and for Mary E. Pearson, I absolutely love her. Please go read Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. The next fantasy book I actually just recently finished, which is kind of surprising because everybody and their brother and the mother and their cousin has read this book. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. And this book was wow. I understand the hype. I understand why everybody is telling you to read this, and it was so good. It was so good, and it was so interesting because some of the main qualms with getting into fantasy reading is the world building can be very overwhelming to some people, which it can be very overwhelming to me as well. That's not me like pointing any fingers. This book is the first book of a series, and I did not feel at any point confused or like I didn't understand something or that the world building was too much for me or anything, but I could vividly picture it in my head. It wasn't because Holly Black's writing is like overly lyrical or descriptive. Like I genuinely like don't know how she did it. It's absolutely incredible how she did it, and I love the main character Jude. She is great. She is hilarious. She has such a sarcastic attitude. She is so like stick it to the man, I guess. And I absolutely love that about her, and I cannot wait to read the second book of this series, and I would highly recommend. It makes sense as to why everybody is recommending this book. It is 370 pages, which also, like The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, for a fantasy book, that's great. Like I think that's great, especially for someone trying to get into fantasy. If it's under 400 pages, I think that's such a great place to hit, because it's not so much of a commitment that you feel overwhelmed or it feels daunting, but you're getting enough story that you can really like lose yourself in the story. And so I would highly recommend The Cruel Prince. Lastly, I have kind of a miscellaneous stack, I guess. They're not any specific genre like romance or suspense or fantasy, but they're just adult fiction books, I guess you could say, or classics, some of them. But the first one that I would recommend is The Alchemist. I absolutely loved this book. There is so much good language in this book. Like, I was just blown away. And also some of the connections and like the realizations that the character has is also incredible. It was definitely a different experience to me from like fantasy or romance, where there's not necessarily any like general big plot point besides the fact that the main character is going on a spiritual journey, which I really enjoyed. And I liked seeing the characters' progressions and the things that they went through and the things that they kind of learned and figured out along the way. And there was just some truly incredible language in this book of things like, if you're looking for a quotable book, this would be the one. It's also a very short book. It's under 200 pages, so low commitment, which is great. And I think there's going to be so many good opportunities for self-reflection and learning and growing while reading this book, and just reading about a character's incredible journey. So highly recommend The Alchemist. Next, along the kind of classics realm, I guess, this book is so beat to crap. I've read this book so many times, but it is John Steinbeck's The Pearl. I love this book. I read it for the first time in high school. It is the babiest of baby books. It is so small and cute and tiny, but it packs a freaking punch. It is under 100 pages, but it is about a man named Kino and his obligation to take care of his family and what he's willing to do to take care of his family. And yeah, I just think this book is incredible. I think it has some really great life lessons in it, and it is such a short book that the low commitment and what you get out of this book is so worth it. So if you're looking for like a little bit of a book and you want it to have, you know, you want it to pack a punch, The Pearl by John Steinbeck is that book for you. Next is very similar to The Alchemist, actually, and it is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Hermann Hesse? I'm so sorry. I butcher names. I'm so bad with names. But this book is very similar to The Alchemist in the sense where it is about a man kind of searching for, I don't know, spiritually searching, spiritual healing. Like, he's looking for something, and I don't know if he knows 100% what it is, but he's looking for something, and he's determined to find it. This book is about 150 pages, so also low commitment. And I just feel like these three books are really good if you are looking for self-reflection, growth, if you're looking for a book that's going to kind of help you hold up a mirror to your own life and kind of take what these characters are going through and take it as like I wonder how I would handle this situation, or I wonder what I would do in this situation, or like, wow, the way that this character articulated this is incredible, and I feel like I can learn and glean from this information and use it in my own life. I think that these three books are really great for that. I think they're very well worth a read in my personal opinion. That is all my recommendations. I hope that that was helpful to some of you who are just starting to get into reading and are wanting some relatively easy to get into, not overwhelmingly long, really good books. I feel very passionate about the books that I recommended, and I picked them with care because I truly feel like they would inspire you guys to dive in deeper with reading. And also, if you haven't read these books and you already are an avid reader, I think that these are great recommendations in general. So that is all I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you guys in my next one. Happy reading. Bye!